This is KIN 236, head and neck, cervical and capital aspects. So I just wanted to take you through the visible body or the muscle in motion aspect and just kind of take you on a tour of the cervical musculature. Just to reiterate, there's a bunch of muscles that are in the head and neck that are supporting muscles, but they can act as prime movers, but we're just looking at big global movements right now and some of the bigger muscles. So for instance, these guys here, these suboccipital muscles, very important for head neck function, but we're not going to get into the actual details of those. So when we look at the neck musculature, you can see a little bit here. You can see these interspinalis and transverse muscles. These are part of the transverse spinalis group that are going from the lumbar spine all the way up to the base of the skull. And here you see the multifidus, and you can see because they start out and they go in this way, right? Let me draw an arrow here. So they actually have this type of attachment. They're going to pull. When they pull, they're going to do opposite sides. So left multifidus or transverse spinalis group, the way they pull, they're going to do right cervical rotation. So if we keep on adding layers here, we get the semispinalis capitis, which is a muscle which is part of the erector spinae group, and you can see that they go from out to in. And then we're going to add another layer that we just learned from the other lecture here. You can see, again, longissimus capitis. This is also part of the erector spinae. And then let me just one more layer here. And then we get the new splenus muscle. So we have splenus capitis. We also have splenus cervicus, and you can see that it has a in to out aspect, right? So if this muscle pulls this way, it's going to pull this attachment this direction, which would result in right cervical rotation. So the right splenus capitis and splenus cervicus produce same side ipsilateral rotation. And we'll keep on adding layers here. Scapula came on, and we'll do one more layer. You can see levator scap. I don't like this image of levator scap. Let me see if I can rotate it and see. Go with the side. So here's levator scap, and you can see that it's coming up and attaching right to the transverse process of these cervical vertebra. So if this guy attaches right there, if this muscle shortens, it's going to pull these guys back this direction, which is going to result in left cervical rotation. So the levator scap does same side ipsilateral cervical rotation. And if we add another layer, I think we're going to get trap here. Nope, not yet. Here's a sternocleidomastoid. That was the muscle that we introduced from the last lecture. And you can see this attachment here running from the sternum all the way up to right behind. Here's where your ear would be, right here. This is your ear. And so it's attaching back here. And if this muscle shortens, it's going to pull the head that direction. So it does same side rotation. You can see that the head's going to come forward, and I'll have a couple other images here that show the cervical flexion. And then I think the next layer here is the trapezius. And so the most superficial layer is the trap, and you can see the muscle attachment coming from here. Remember, this is a shoulder muscle. We think of it as a shrugging motion, lifting the shoulders up this direction. But if this shoulder stays stable, these fibers are going to pull down this direction, and it's going to pull the head to the right. So it does contralateral cervical or head rotation. So let's go to the all right, so we have the cervical spine here. See these little protrusions here? These are the spinous processes. And then if I do another rotation here, you got these guys sticking out here. Those are the transverse processes. Here's a nice little image of the C1, C2. Here's C2. There's the den sticking out right here. Right, this is part of C2, and C1 rotates on that. Now there's no flexion or extension here, and very little lateral movement. The lateral movement's happening here, but all rotation's happening around, most of it in this this relationship right here. So here you're seeing cervical flexion and extension. I'm sorry, cervical flexion and capital flexion. So that's you standing and trying to bring your chin to your chest. So all these cervical vertebrae coming forward. The next image you're going to see is your head sticking forward, so it's going to be cervical flexion with capital extension. Let me see if I can pause it. So cervical capital extension, cervical flexion. This is cervical extension with capital flexion. So this is you giving yourself a double chin, tucking your chin into your throat. And then the next one we're going to see, well, that we didn't see extension. But so these are some of the other muscles. These are the scalenes, posterior, middle, and anterior scalenes, some of the anterior musculature, deep aspect, which we're not getting to in class, but just realize that those muscles exist. You can see here, though, this is the sternocleidomastoid, the SCM, and you can see its function in cervical flexion. So you can see when you're bringing your chin up or doing cervical flexion that it is bringing this attachment closer and it's tucking your chin down. So more of the scalenes here. But here you can see the sternocleidomastoid right in this direction here doing cervical flexion. Let's go to extension. So there's your spinal extension and capital extension. And here you can see your levator scapula and your upper trap bilaterally. Instead of doing rotation, they do cervical extension. And you can see the arrows drawn there with the muscle pull. Right, so if just this guy contracted, it would be doing rotation to the right. If this right trap contracted, it would be rotation to the left. If they both contract, so they work all synergistically to do cervical extension. The erector spinae also do cervical extension. I think that's depicted in the next image here. Yep, and so you can see the Spinalis capitis, and then you can see the erector spinae that are coming from the back all the way up to the back of the skull. And they also do cervical extension. So we have a lot of extensor musculature, but not a lot of flexor musculature. And then these are the suboccipital muscles, but again, we're not going to get into those. So let's go frontal plane motion. We'll look at lateral flexion. So this is lateral flexion, bringing your left ear to your left shoulder. And you can see now the trapezius is right here. You can see the trap, number 5. This is levator scapula coming up. This is number 1. Number 3 is your Spinalis capitis. Here's your SCM, your sternocleidomastoid. And you can see that everything on this side of the axis, so we'll go back to the one video, all the muscles on this side are producing that movement. All these guys on this side are antagonists. They're turned off in that movement there. Here you can see a different view of the sternocleidomastoid. There's trap. These are the anterior scalenes, again, muscles that we're not going to be talking about. Here's your trapezius. Here's your Spinalis capitis, Spinalis cervicus, your levator scap, and your SCM, all working synergist in agonist in doing lateral flexion. Now, again, this is assuming this is an anti-gravity situation. So if you were standing, these muscles would be the agonist eccentrically, and then agonist on the way back up. So, from this view here, right? Because gravity is trying to pull the head down. These muscles are shortening to contract, to overcome gravity. These are relaxing and lengthening at that same time. In this position here, right, these are just shown in terms of this side function. But in standing, these would be the antagonists because gravity is trying to pull the head down. Let me pull from this view. So in this case, gravity is trying to pull the head down here. So it would be these muscles on this side, left side, that would be working. These guys would be relaxing, eccentric on the way down, bringing your right ear to the shoulder, and then concentric on the way up. But it would be these muscles on this side. Oops. These muscles nonetheless. And let me see what video 5 is. And looking there. All right, so let's go to horizontal plane. So now we're looking at rotation. So with rotation, you're getting capital. You're not getting any capital movement. All of this is happening at C1, C2, and a little bit happening from these cervical vertebrae. Let's see if I can. There we go. So here you see upper trap and sternocleidomastoid. The trap in this aspect is working as an antagonist. It's the opposite side trap. Or I'm sorry. The trap is working as an agonist here. This guy's contracting. The left side trap is turning your head to the right. And sternocleidomastoid, it is pulling on that side and pulling the head back. So sternocleidomastoid and upper trap work together on the same side to produce contralateral cervical rotation. And you can see this attachment going from here to there for the sternocleidomastoid. So as that's shortening, that's trying to straighten that guy out. Those muscles are going from a lengthened position to a shortened position. That's the resulting head movement. And same thing here. This attachment here is coming forward, and the upper trap is working in that direction. So here you see a nice view of the upper trapezius working as a contralateral cervical rotator. So the head's it's pulling on the capital occipital here, and it's pulling on the nuchal ligament right here through the spinous processes. And as this muscle shortens, remember, instead of the shoulder coming up this direction, it's going to pull the head this direction. It's also doing cervical extension at the same time. So if you were to turn in this position, if you were to turn your head to the right and look up at the ceiling, that would be maximal, and shrug your left shoulder, that would be maximal shortening of the upper trapezius. So those are the scalenes along his capitis. Here another view of seeing the SCM, the sternocleidomastoid, working as a cervical rotator. And again, now looking at spinalis, capitis, and upper trap. So you have contralateral rotation being occurred by the upper trap, and ipsilateral rotation by the right spinalis, capitis. What I would suggest is you guys make a muscle chart, and just like we did in class with the lower body, and do it for the upper body, and look at who your rotators, and you can look at just like this, your sagittal plane, frontal plane, and horizontal/transverse plane, and look at what muscle participation is happening within that, and being able to identify the motion, the agonists, and the antagonists. And in part of understanding the agonists and antagonists, you have to know which phase is concentric or eccentric. In this rotation aspect, it's easy because gravity is down, and so you know, the movement is happening perpendicular to that, so it's concentric each direction. But you have a bunch of new muscles here you're able to kind of visually see, so hopefully that was helpful.